Is the future of the growth of industries in Sub-Saharan Africa predicated on the trajectory of telecommunications? Vitiva Capital Management has released a maiden telecommunications report on the Sub-Saharan region that looks at some of the opportunities present in Sub-Saharan Africa, drilling down to select economies which include Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya, Ghana, and Angola. The author of the report, Telco analyst Victoria Ejugu, joins us now to discuss further. Victoria, good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. So, look, as far as the telecommunications sector is concerned, how integral is it to the growth of other sectors, considering how many of these businesses rely on telco services?
Good morning to you too, Rotus, and thanks for having me today. So like you rightly said, the telecommunications sector is really integral to the growth of other sectors, and that's because their productivity is hinged on connectivity, and which we know the telecom sector provides and facilitates, both offline and online. They facilitate internet access, and you need that for information transfer, information sharing. We also have voice services in which they provide. That's good for offline conversations. And so just because of that, we think that the telecom sector is an enabler of all other sectors. All
right. Your report says the global telco industry, I think the figure is $5 trillion, with a compound annual growth rate of, what is that figure? 10%. Yeah, so what are the triggers as far as this valuation and where things are going with this growth, with the CAGR?
So there have been a couple of factors that has driven the sector thus far. The first is the world population. So we have seen world population grow to about 7 billion now, and that has driven subscriber growth. There's also been economic advancements in the global economy, and because of that, we're seeing improved income levels, and that has driven demand for telco services. And we also have the proliferation of mobile devices and its adoption. So when you bring a combination of these three factors, that explains why we've seen burgeoning demand for telco services, and in turn, we've seen strong revenue growth from these operators. Looking ahead, we still expect more subscriber growth. The World Bank projects 2% annual growth rate for the world population. There's also the internet that is supposed to drive revenue growth for these telco providers.
Great stuff. For drilling down to Sub-Saharan Africa, though, what about for the region? What about the growth triggers there?
So the story is not too different for Sub-Saharan Africa. We have a huge population here. That means that there's a huge market to be served. There's also strong adoption of smartphone devices. Smartphone affordability has also driven its adoption. We also have a demographic profile that is characterized as young and growing. So these are the young digital natives that are supposed to drive subscriber growth. And then there's also a burgeoning need to stay connected. So for Sub-Saharan Africa, that's been the trigger, and that will continue to be the trigger in the mid to long term.
Great stuff. We've been talking about telcos or telecommunications as a lifeblood for other industries. What about the lifeblood for telcos itself? There's a couple charts on internet penetration from your report. Is that the lifeblood of the kind of growth that we're trying to see the lifeblood for the sector itself?
Yes, I would say that that's the lifeblood for the sector itself. The world is experiencing a digital shift. Because of that, the need to access the internet has taken on greater significance. And so, just moving ahead, there will be more and more. The only way for demand for data is upwards. We have a young digital native that are going to drive internet demand. We also have population growth, urbanization, and so all that is supposed to drive demand for the internet, and that will continue to go upwards.
If we look at that chart, there's still, I think Sub-Saharan Africa so 46% versus Europe, Greater China, Latin America. Are you optimistic for growth as far as that region too? I don't know if I should be asking if it's going to match up with the others, but yeah, I mean, that number has to go up here.
Definitely. It has to go up. It just shows that the market is underserved.
Right.
And what you've seen is telcos are trying to tap into that to, increase their network coverage rate. And because of that, trying to make network available at every nook and cranny of the region.
Yeah.
So we believe that if they continue to do that, we'll continue to see expansion of the sector in Sub-Saharan Africa.
If you're driving around Lagos, you'll see some colorful cables around there. I think there's an acceleration there in connectivity. Data versus voice revenue. I think we got a chart from there on your report as well, where you're seeing the data. There it is. Yeah, Telco seeing consistent growth in their data business. Is this going to, I don't know why you put AT&T versus Airtel and MTN, but it's growing. Either way, it's growing. So does that trend continue as, I guess, the triggers you mentioned prior, population growth and so internet penetration, does that data revenues outstrip voice for those players?
Yeah, definitely. You know, we spoke to internet penetration still remaining low in Sub-Saharan Africa. So that just shows that the market is underserved. And so, like I said earlier, as telcos continue to tap into this and increase their network coverage, you see more and more people tap into availability. And it's only the only way up, it's only upwards that we see for data revenue, at least in the midterm.
Is voice still important though, as far as a component for revenue for the players compared to data?
Yeah, you can say that voice is still important, but generally we expect slowing growth from that segment. And the reason for this is simply the internet. You know, there's now a growing preference for internet calls, WhatsApp calls.
Right.
Yeah, so
WhatsApp has ads on YouTube telling people to use WhatsApp to make phone calls.
So that should affect growth for voice, but overall it's still important. We still have people that are offline that would still want to connect. So yeah, would see slowing growth from there, and then the internet takes on the larger share of revenue. Great.
As far as stocks, telco stocks, your report, which again you authored, says that these stocks are undervalued. So there's some possible, what's the explanation behind that for the undervalued stocks, or for telco stocks?
Right. So when you talk about valuations, there are two things that come into play here. What's the performance of this company right now, and what's expected performance in the future? So when you look at telcos in Sub-Saharan Africa, they've been able to post strong growth, stronger growth than their global peers, superior profitability, and then looking at the future, because of our low penetration rate, you know that there's a huge opportunity for them, and that should mean that they should demand stronger valuations, but that's not been the case. I think they're trading around 52% discounts to their global peers, and so just because of this, we believe that there's a further room for upward movement in share price of these companies.
Okay, very interesting. What about challenges to the sector, as far as what the challenges that they're facing?
So there are a couple of challenges we see that would affect their operations. One is regulatory challenges. We've seen policies come in and affect subscriber growth.
To say the least.
Yes, we've seen that in Nigeria. We've seen that in Kenya.
Yeah.
So we believe that there might be policies that might hinder growth for them, but overall they've proved to be resilient, and you know that shouldn't be cause for alarm.
Any outlook for Q4 festive period? People flying in, maybe more phone calls, concerts, people sharing pictures. Q4 outlook, and I guess maybe for 2023, 2023 is not too far out.
So like I stated earlier before, I think telcos right now in Sub-Saharan Africa are focused on trying to increase penetration rates and make network more available. And so as they try to do that, we believe that people will continue to tap into their network availability, and that should drive growth for Q4 and even 2023.
Great stuff. Victoria Jugu, great report. I read it last night. Very engrossing stuff. Lots of numbers and charts. As I like charts and numbers in reports. Vetiva Capital Management, telecommunications analyst. We appreciate you coming on.